76 years in less than 7 minutes. All right, we'll see if I can manage that. That's a challenge for me. Indeed, I was born into this world very right-brained, very intuitive, very holistic, big picture. These are lots of different terms that gives the audience an idea. I was a child that when at 5 or 6 years old, I was beginning to invent my own magic. I found these little seeds that would fall out of trees behind my house, and to me, it was obvious that if you tossed one into the air and then you had an intention before you caught it, it would come true. And I would sit in the back of my dad's car trying to make all the traffic lights be green just as he got to them, because I knew that my intent could do things like that. So I just was born that way, a right-brained individual, very strong in the intuitive side and not so strong on the logical side. But I knew that I had to develop that logical side, that was the reason I was here, that logical side was something I had to work at. So as I was in 6, 7 years old, I had entities come to me and take me out of body, actually show me how to go out of body, how I could go explore consciousness space. I was put in courses, instructed how to get around and how to work in that space, things to do, things not to do, that sort of thing.
Instructed by whom? Sorry, Tom.
Let's say other entities, other consciousnesses like me, except a lot wiser and a lot more mature. But interesting enough, Simon, when I was in that out of body, I wasn't 6 or 7 years old. I was kind of a young adult. When I'd come back, that was one of the amazing things. You'd come back from that more adult picture back into the body of a 6-year-old, and it was quite a transition. So that was really my beginnings. But then eventually that all stopped. And it stopped with the explanation that I needed to grow up normally. So, I wouldn't be so weird. I wouldn't be so different than everybody else. That was important, that I be more average, normal, fit in, because that would help me grow up more balanced. So that went away. And that was explained to me. I was told that this is going to go away. You're not going to be able to do this anymore. We're not going to come down and take you out. The courses are over for now. You will get back to it. Well, I got back to it after I got out of graduate school. I was working on my PhD in physics. I'm a physicist. And when I was in graduate school, I saw a sign that said, learn how to meditate, get by with less sleep. And I thought, just what I need. So I took the meditation, and it was a natural. The very first time I sat down with my very own mantra, that I had given a banana for, and, there it was. I just disappeared into consciousness space. And what seemed to me like maybe 5 minutes later, I was nudged to say, it's time to go. And I realized I'd been there for almost an hour. So that was my first meditation as it was coming back later. Well, got out of graduate school, took a job, met Bob Monroe. Bob Monroe is the guy who wrote books, Journeys Out of Body, Far Journeys, Ultimate Journey. And it turns out he lived only a 45-minute drive away from where I lived. So a bunch of us went out to meet Bob to see, is this guy real? Is he just making this up, trying to sell books, or what? So I went to see Bob, and Bob was a very rational guy. He had the personality of an engineer, very matter of fact, very factual. And his books were just like a diary. This is what happened to me. So he was in the process of putting together a laboratory to study consciousness, because he very much wanted this experience of his to be on the science mat, to be kind of justified as real. He didn't want it to be the crazy old guy that did these strange things. He wanted this to be science. So he was wealthy, so he set up a lab and wanted scientists to help him do it, and I just happened to be there, so I volunteered. And the deal was that I would be his scientist if he would teach me how to do what he did, to have those experiences. Well, it was a natural. I came to those experiences again very quickly. And pretty soon, all of that I had forgotten long ago, poured back into my mind, and I was reawakened to it. And my position as a physicist was that I wanted to understand it. How did it work? Why did it work? As a graduate student, I had learned that I could go into a meditation state and debug my software. I would see the software scrolling by and the output, and those lines of code that had problems with them would be red, and all the rest would just be black on white. And then I'd go check, this is back in the days of boxes of cards, and I'd go back and check my boxes of cards, and sure enough, that statement I saw that was colored red was the problem statement, even to the point that sometimes I couldn't find the problem with it, but sure enough, that's where the system bombed. It was because the card punch wasn't exactly lined up right, and the machine was unable to read it, and that's what was bombing the program. So it found even those kinds of things. And as a physicist, that was astounding, as you can imagine. So it's like suddenly here's all the rest of this reality that I really don't know about. And a physicist, what we do is model reality. That's our job. So suddenly my job got bigger. And I thought, well, how does this work? Then I was with Bob Monroe, and then I was back out into the out-of-body space, the mental space. We were playing with all sorts of paranormal things, trying to convince ourselves that it was real, that we weren't just making it up, because that was the first hypothesis going in, is that we're just making it up. So eventually, let me fast forward now, 35, 40 years later, I had been doing research in consciousness. In other words, okay, I could use my mind to heal. I could use my mind to remote view and do these things. And there were lots of variables of my attitude and how I felt and my diet and just lots and lots of things that you could change. So I changed one, repeat, see how it worked. Change another one, repeat, see how it worked. And it wasn't that simple. You'd have to do this like 20 times. You'd change a variable, then 10 or 20 times you'd have to work that way. Then you'd change another variable. Well, 35 years later, I thought I had an idea how it worked and what was significant about it. In other words, I'm a scientist studying consciousness from the inside, not from the outside looking at other people's consciousness, but from inside my own consciousness. And I write the trilogy. Shortly after writing the trilogy, I got some aha moments and realized that I could take that theory of consciousness that I had written in my trilogy, and I could define and derive physics. Matter of fact, specifically, I could derive quantum mechanics and answer the big questions like, why should particles be best described as probability distributions? How did quantum physics work? Because physicists don't know that. They just say it's weird science. Well, my understanding from consciousness said it's not weird at all. If you understand consciousness and understand how reality works, it's a logical science like any other science.
Yeah.
And I could answer the outstanding paradoxes there with perfectly reasonable, understanding. And the same for relativity. Relativity, the big question is, why is C a constant? So anyway, that's where I am, where I come from.
There we go.
I'm getting the sign like, Tom, it's time to wind this up. So
you spotted it. I thought I was being subtle.
I'm seeing your sign. All right. So basically then I have a trilogy, and better yet, I have about 1,000 hours of YouTube video.
And many subscribers as well.
Yeah, that starts with the idea of creating a model of reality, a scientific model of reality, and it comes to the astounding conclusion that consciousness is fundamental.